The freedoms we hold dear in California are under attack. Those were the words of Golden State Governor Gavin Newsom in a new proclamation released Thursday calling a special session. The focus? To quote, safeguard California values and fundamental rights in the face of an incoming Trump administration. For context, Trump vowed to implement mass deportations of illegal aliens on day one in office. Set to begin December 2nd, the California special session will focus on boosting funding for the state's Justice Department to file legal challenges against Trump actions. Talks from the Trump camp have included using local law enforcement and state National Guard units to enforce the deportation order.
But Democratic governors are balking at the plan. When asked about it, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey said absolutely not. Let's take a look.
If the Trump administration requests it, would the Massachusetts State Police assist in mass deportations?
No, absolutely not. But, you know, let me say this. I do think it's important that we all recognize that there's going to be a lot of pressure on states and state officials. And I can assure you we're going to work really hard to deliver. Some realities also need to be, noted, and that is in 2016, we had a very different situation in the courts. And while I'm sure there may be litigation ahead, there's a lot of other ways that people are going to act and need to act for the sake of their states and their residents. There's regulatory authority and executive powers and the like. There's legislation also within our states. So I think that the key here is that every tool in the toolbox has got to be used to protect our citizens, to protect our residents, and protect our states, and certainly to hold the line on democracy and the rule of law.
Uncertain of what the incoming administration will do with regard to foreign policy, Biden's administration remains uncertain how to fortify its national security priorities and lock in what they say President Biden has accomplished. But as Politico reports, the Biden White House is already taking steps to do what they can to help Ukraine. Those steps include shipping the rest of the $6 billion in weaponry and equipment that Congress has already appropriated to assist Kyiv. One senior official told Politico that there's no such thing as Trump proofing, just Trump delaying. There is also widespread fear among federal workers. Trump has pledged to fire many non-partisan civil servants and replace them with loyalists, people loyal to, of course, Mr. Trump. These include employees at the Department of Justice and the Environmental Protection Agency, among others. It is unclear what President Biden's administration can do to protect the current crop of workers. So, Amber, there's a lot to unpack in all of that, but let's start with the states and these governors who are, I guess it's the beginning of the anti-Trump resistance at the state level. What do you make of that?
I actually probably have a somewhat surprising take here, which is that they have every right to do this. Republican attorneys general did this during the Biden administration, partly in response to what they saw as an effective strategy during the first Trump administration in 2016 to slow walk a lot of his agenda by tying him up in the legal processes. And since then, Republican AGs went after the Biden administration for trying to prevent Virginia from clearing its voter rolls of illegal aliens. They sparred quite frequently on Biden's executive actions related to immigration, as well as some of the energy mandates that were implemented through the EPA. And even as we started filming this segment, I got an email from Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach's office.
Breaking news.
Yeah, that him and a coalition of 15 other state attorneys general struck down a Biden administration program that would have granted amnesty to illegal aliens married to U.S. citizens. U.S. District Court Judge J. Campbell Barker sided with the attorneys general. So the states are welcome to do this. Of course, the courts are much more friendly to Trump now, as Maura Healey noted in her comments there in that interview. And I would also maybe warn them a little bit that on immigration, things are going to be a little bit tougher for them to challenge because that is generally believed to be a federal issue. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really good to get all those examples that you cited of Republican attorneys general pushing back against the Biden administration. And at some level, this is a really concrete, immediate issue about very important policy priorities for Biden previously and is soon going to be Trump. And on the other hand, it's just this further insight into the whole, the basic bedrock of American government, right, which is states having a lot of power to push back on that. And the question sometimes is that break upon a president's priorities advantageous because it creates you can allow people to have reservations and to go through the legal process, or does it end up, as we become more polarized as a society, kind of tying things up in constant inaction? Certainly on immigration, on things like, I think the resistance to student loan forgiveness did come at to some extent from states. Maybe I'm incorrect about that, I'm going from memory. But these legal challenges, I hope that other Conservatives will be as consistent in their principles as you, and note that that is something that there's a right to do.
Yeah, well, look, we love federalism, or we're supposed to at least, and the Constitution has a pretty clear delineation of what are federal powers and what are state powers, and it's for the courts to, interpret that, and hopefully, in my opinion, as much of an originalist position as possible, to make sure that states, of course, are protected from federal overreach, but also are not able to stop what is within federal executive power. What I think conservatives have a bigger problem with is the second part of this intro that we did, which is when federal workers who are part of the executive branch might be doing things to slow walk or stop a president's agenda. And that, to me, is very anti-democratic. It is against the will of the people, unelected bureaucrats hamstringing what the voters asked this president to do.
I think that there's validity to that argument, because it is one of those topics where I feel like political or ideological positions have reversed to some extent. It used to be the case that Democrats pushing, shall we say, a more progressive agenda believed that there were people in the government bureaucracy who were at least temperamentally more conservative, if not ideologically more conservative, and so wanted to put the brakes on. Now that is an argument that one hears from the Trump people. I suppose I do have some issue if it is purely, and I'm here arguing against the point I've just made in a way. There is a different thing, I think, when it is just a matter of an administration trying to install pure loyalists to do their bidding no matter what, even if there are practical concerns against it. So in other words, do you take out people who, rather than being resistant to a democratic mandate, are in fact independent experts about how to enact that mandate? Those two things seem different from me, and I think there are dangers to just having a civil service stalked by political loyalists themselves.
I think that's a fair question. And I mean, going back to the first Trump administration, I think the key thing that I would hone in on is that there were dedicated social media accounts from members of certain departments that would leak planned documents rather for Trump plans and try to get people to help them stop them. They would deliberately slow walk rulemaking. So for me, those people who are part of the resistance, the anti-Trump resistance, as detailed in that infamous New York Times article by Miles Taylor, those people should have to go, I think.
I also think, this is, sorry to cut across,
no,
but
please.
It's actually to agree with you, those people should resign. Like
Right.
The honourable position there is to say, I don't agree with this,
Yeah,
I'm done.
and by the way,
Yeah.
I feel the same way about the progressives in the Biden administration who were protesting against his stance on Israel, right? Like, he didn't get elected as a pro-Palestine president, and he is enacting the foreign policy that he ran on and that he has had for basically his entire career. So if you have a problem with that and you want a ceasefire and an arms embargo, then you probably shouldn't be working for the administration.
But many of them, to be fair, did resign. No, I agree.
Well, yeah, which is the just position.
Exactly.
I agree with you on that.
Honourable position to go on.
Yeah.
We've got through all that, Amber, and we haven't even touched upon whether people like Newsom are doing this to position themselves for the 2028 race. But perhaps we'll leave 2028 speculation for a week or so after the current election. More topics on Rising right after this.